All right, guys. I am coming at y'all tonight with just sort of a hangout, ramble type video. We're just going to maybe do some maintenance on some knives, just look at some random stuff. We're going to shout out some people. We're going to look at some leather. Just a lot of fun stuff. Um, just a real casual kind of video. First, let me shout out Travis, the case guy. He hit me up on one of my shorts and he said, "Hey man, would you be interested in doing a sticker swap?" I said, "Sure." So I sent him one of my decals, and a few days went by and I had a couple of his. So appreciate you, Travis. Y'all go check his videos out, his channel out. He's got some really good stuff. I'll keep this in the frame here. um, so another person I want to shout out. This is something I kind of never got around to properly. I did a short, and I shouted the person out in the short. But Kirby Creek Maurice, many of y'all already know Mo and the absolutely fantastic carvings he does. And he had a few pieces, and he posted, and he said, anybody that would like to have one of these, hit me up in the comments. I'm gonna send a couple of these out. And I told him, I said, I would be honored to have, one of your carvings. And so he responded, and he said, I've been watching your channel and I loved what you're doing. He said, I'm definitely gonna send you one. So here is the piece that I got from Mo, and I am absolutely stoked. I mean, this guy, he stays proudly displayed with all my knives. And everybody gives their little man a quirky name, and so we all decided, my wife and kids, we all decided that this is Woodrow, and yeah, just really stoked to have this little feller. Thank you, Mo. Let's see if I can something, I don't know, try not to crowd my area up so I can show y'all a few things here. I don't want to be that guy that's constantly moving stuff around during his video, but I'll get this put in a good spot and let it be. So, something I've done here lately, I used to kind of keep a lot of my knives kind of displayed on this little desk that I have, but then we got these kittens, and guys, I'm not a cat person. I'm really not. Any of y'all that have ever had kittens, y'all have to know what kind of absolute hell kittens can wreak havoc on anything like a coffee table or anything. You're just constantly screaming at these kittens to get off of that and get down from there and all that stuff. And these were sort of some kittens that we rescued when I was moving my son's truck, which belonged to my father-in-law. These dang kittens were in the back of it, and I couldn't find a mama anywhere. And I give her plenty of chance to come back and get these kittens, and I never saw her. And I just, in good faith, I couldn't toss these kittens out. So we got these two kittens, and long story short, I could not keep my knives displayed on that table like I wanted to, because every time they came in the room, they were knocking stuff around, and you guys know how we are with our knives. I couldn't have kittens just kicking stuff all over the place. So I moved a lot of my knives into like cardboard boxes, and I hated that because you spend all this money, or you do trading or whatever you do, to acquire these things, and you're proud to have them, and it's like you want to display them, and I couldn't stand it. So anyway, I came across this box. It's got a lid, but I've got it folded over with some stuff on top of it. Anyway, I found this box, and I turned it into like my little nightstand box where I kept my my EDC gear or whatever. I hate that term. I don't ever say that, but I keep my stuff I carry every day in this box. And then it sort of got to where it was like, oh, what am I going to do with this knife or this Zippo or whatever? And it kind of filled up quick. But I love having this box on my nightstand because I've got all my leather in here. Maybe not all of it, but most of my slips and my sheaths are in here. This is pretty much full of copper locks. They're actually underneath a lot of this, and I've got some of that thick wax paper protecting everything. So it's really not piled in here as badly as it looks. But yeah, I've enjoyed having this little box here, and So I thought I'd just bring the whole box out. This is kind of like the stuff that I really carry most often. And I'll start unloading some of this stuff and showing y'all a lot of what I got here. But yeah, this was just going to be a ramble. I thought I might, put some mineral oil on some of these knives. It's good not to let your bone and your stag dry out. I thought I would talk a little bit about some leather and shout out some leather workers. And I also thought I would shout out a few guys that I have done some trading with. Just like I said, this is just going to be super casual. This is a late night thing. I kind of thought about maybe doing a live, but I knew that I wasn't going to get around to this until later in the night. And I knew it wouldn't be a good time to do a live. So I thought, well, I'll just shoot this like a regular video. And this may not even be something that everybody's interested in, but I know that the guys that really follow me are going to enjoy this, because I'm going to show y'all some patina. I'm going to show y'all some stuff I actually carry, and we're just gonna have a little chat, a little ramble, and see where it goes. It might be a 45-minute video. I don't know. The dogs may wind up barking and carrying on, but we'll just see where it takes us. So let me start with, I want to shout out Aaron at 865 Knives. Me and him, this wasn't what you'd call a trade, I don't think, but it was more like I sent him a little gift and he sent me a gift in return. But yeah, everybody loves a pair of Knipex, right? Actually, I said that wrong. I think it's Knipex. I always, when I first saw this, I always pronounced it with a K silent, kind of like you say knife. But I think the way you actually pronounce this is Knipex or Knipex. Anyway, I think they're German made or something like that. But anyway, he sent me a pair of these pliers that have the smooth jaw. So you actually have kind of like a miniature crescent wrench kind of a plier in your hand. You got all these settings, like a channel lock, and you get this, and it closes up parallel, just like a a crescent wrench, so you can, tighten a bolt or whatever. And he knew that I'm a machinist, and he had these laying around. He thought I could use these, and I'm gonna tell you something. These things are neat and they're handy. When you just have like what I use these for mostly. We use these coolant misters at work. We run these coolant misters on our parts to keep our tools from galding and stuff like that, And a lot of times the little banjo fittings get loose, and they're basically like a bolt with a hole in the side, and the air and the fluid has to go through there. And if those things get loose, they the mister won't work properly, because it's all works off of vacuum and airflow and stuff. And I can take these things right here, and I can grab that little bolt on there, which is only about not even a 3/8 size, and I can get them things tight with these pliers, and I don't have to go hunting for a little crescent wrench and all that. So these things have come in handy, and I know these things aren't cheap, so I was pretty stoked whenever he sent these to me. And that's not all. Oh, let me show you. I found this little belt sheath at an antique store, and it was like $5, and I was like, I knew it was going to be too wide for like a knife. I mean, I don't know. Here's a full-size trapper, and like, see how it's just got too much room. But I couldn't really pass this up for $5. This was clearly made by an individual. It has no kind of markings on it whatsoever, and I just thought it was neat. And so I bought this for like $5. I thought, well, I'll figure out something to do with it. And lo and behold, wouldn't you know that these pliers fit in here. See, there's almost no wiggle room once you get these pliers in here. And so I wear this. Now, it's not forming to the pliers like Aaron's sheath does. But, I can wear these on my belt, and I've got just enough room to grab these things and pull them out. So this little package here just worked out really well. And the other thing he sent me was this really cool 32 Stockman. And I'm going to tell y'all something. I've got my Stag knives out over here too. Everybody loves Stag, right? I've got this 18 Stockman, and I've had a couple of 18 Stockmans before this one. I'm just not an 18 kind of guy. I don't necessarily like this thin, pointy, delicate Turkish clip. When I look at that, I think, well, I could probably dig a splinter out of my finger, but like, I don't know. I mean, sure, you can peel an apple and do stuff with it, and it would probably do a whole lot more work than I give it credit for. But just something about this little thin blade, just, I don't know, man. I just not a big fan of it. One of my 18s, the blade actually rested down in there a little bit farther, and I almost could never. And it might have had a shallow nail nick. You know, I've seen that before too, where the nail nick just didn't feel like it was deep enough. But I had an 18 that I almost never could. I can get this one out pretty easy, so it's not that bad. But I had one that it almost always slipped off of my thumbnail 2 or 3 times before I could get it open. But I'll show you this one while I've got it in my hand. This is one of those Stag pieces that has kind of a, you know, the show side isn't great. It's got some contrast here, but it's not got like grooves, deep grooves in it like you'd expect or like you'd, you know, want it to have. But now the pile side's pretty decent. You know, it's pretty decent on the pile side. But I bought this thing knowing that I wasn't a huge fan of an 18, but I'm kind of trying to build a little bit of a Stag collection of case knives, and I've got a few others too. But yeah, I got this. I'm not gonna say I got a great deal on this. I think I'd give about 85 bucks for it. But at the time, I had the money, and I thought, you know what, I'm gonna go ahead and add that to my collection. And I'm glad I did. No regrets. It's not going to go anywhere. Even though I'm not a fan of an 18, I'm not necessarily going to, you know, want to trade it or sell it or anything. But anyway, with all that being said, I kind of prefer a Stockman, obviously with a more a bigger profile on the clip blade here. But I kind of prefer a Stockman with a square edge. A square bolster. You know, that's why I like the 75 so well. A lot of people think this is too big, but I really like a 75. And so this 32 is just almost like a little scaled down 75. And Aaron sent me this. I don't think Aaron is a big fan of Stockmans in general. I think he likes single bladed knives and maybe occasionally a trapper, a 2-bladed knife. But I've heard him say on occasions that he's just not a Stockman fan. And so he sent this to me, and I don't know if he knew it or not, but I was actually on the hunt for a nice 32. You know, I've had the 32 jackknife, and I actually had a chestnut bone. I ended up giving it to Big J because he was kind of on the chestnut hunt. And I'm gonna back this box up a little bit because I'm resting my arms on it. It's not really all that comfortable. Aaron sent me this 32. This is actually a Case Brothers knife. I'll show y'all this tang. It's gonna be hard to see because it's tiny. But this is a Case Brothers knife, and I've had a few other patterns. They do things a little different. They're a little bit harder to date because they don't have the typical dots and X's and all that stuff that we're used to. So I'm not real sure what year this is, but this is a really nice little knife. The blades are all, it does have a little blade rub, but that doesn't, you know, I don't care. But the back springs are strong. The blade centering's pretty good. I mean, it does have some blade rub, but it's not bad. And what's cool about these 32s is they don't have a spay blade. They come with a decent sized pin blade as your third. So yeah, just a really nice knife. This is a good size to carry. It's not gonna dig into your leg while it's in your pocket. Obviously, a lot of us use a slip, so you get you a slip that fits this knife and you're good to go. But yeah, I just wanted to shout him out nice and proper. I did the short right after I got this, and I tagged him in it and thanking him for it. But I wanted to talk about it in a long form video. So here's the nice Case Brothers 32 Stockman that Aaron over at 865 Knives sent me, and he also sent me a killer swag pack. I got all kinds of stickers. You know, I told him he's got that Tennessee River Boys gang or whatever sticker, and I told him, I said, you know, I'm a Tennessee River boy. I said, I can literally be at the Tennessee River in 30 minutes from where I live, because as y'all know, the Tennessee River makes a big path through North Alabama. So he was like, yeah, he's like, I didn't realize that, but yeah. So I'm right there on the Tennessee River myself. A lot of y'all know I live in North Alabama. I don't live all that far from Kent Smith. Y'all know Kent Smith's name gets brought up a lot in my videos. Kent is a phenomenal leather worker. I will start showing y'all some of Kent's work. He's a phenomenal leather worker, and when I tell y'all he makes a quality sheath, I'm telling y'all he makes a sheath that is like the kind of quality you'd find on a fine horse saddle. The stuff is thick, but not too thick, and he's just got these pancake sheaths nailed. And he actually sent me this one. He wanted me to do a little R&D on it, and I was excited as all get out when he said, I'm gonna send you a sheath that I want you to try. But if you'll notice what's different about these, see, this is like a big thick piece on the back and another big thick piece, and they're all, you know, full size, full width. Where this one, he used a big old thick piece on the back, and to lighten it up and make it a little more, you know, pliable, this front part of the pocket is sewed on by itself. So that's the difference. You'll notice right here where it's stitched, but it doesn't carry all the way out. But this is also a thick enough piece to where it's not ever going to wear out on you. So he sent me this. He said, hey, I want you to try this out. Tell me what you think. So far, it has held up beautifully. But like I said, I got this one from him, and this one here is got a little bit deeper pocket, and this fits a 75 Stockman or a 54 Trapper. I'm sure there's other things like a 75 Moose would fit this, but basically it needs to be at least a 4 1/8 inch knife so you can get it out. We'll come back to this knife in just a second here. This one here he sent me the other day. I ordered a pancake sheath from him to give to my father for Christmas. I've got this really killer Christmas gift idea planned for my dad, and I don't think Dad gets on here and watches these videos, so I'm not worried about talking about it. But my dad had a dark red copper lock from like 1997. It had to be one of the first years copper lock was ever made, and it was dark red bone. And my dad carried that from 97. Now I was born in 85, but I remember being about 12 years old or somewhere around there. And I remember my dad getting this copper lock case knife for Christmas from my grandparents. And man, he had that thing for years and years and years. And every time he would pull that thing out, I always admired that knife. It just, man, these copper locks just have a look to them. I've got this one right here. I'll just go ahead and pull it out and show it to you. This was a trade I did with Big J. And this is kind of a one-of-a-kind copper lock, if you ask me, because of how thick it is. This is saw cut bone, and I'm here to tell you now, not every saw cut bone is this thick. I've got a green one over here, and I've done this comparison in other videos, but I've got a green one over here, and it's saw cut, and it's not this thick. This thing has got some thickness to it now, and this thing has a Big J edge. He put kind of a tall profile edge on this. I don't remember what angle it was, but I'm gonna tell you, this thing right here, I'm pretty sure you could go into surgery with this thing. It is an absolute laser beam, and I haven't touched it up because when Big J puts an edge on a knife, I'm gonna tell you, you've got yourself a sharp knife. Big J knows what he's doing, and he has some really nice sharpening systems. Everything I sharpen is freehand with a stone. I actually had a stone I meant to bring out, but I forgot it. I only thought about it just now. But I do everything freehand. So everything, whatever angle I put on it, is just what feels right. And every single knife I sharpen, I go back to just what I feel like is good, and then we hit it with a leather belt, or sometimes I use the upper on my boot and I strop it a little bit. But yeah, when Dad would pull his copper lock out, I always just admired the curves and the long pull and the swedge. And this was before I even knew what a swedge was, or a clip point, any of that. I didn't even know that this was a feature taken from a copperhead. I didn't even know what a copperhead was. I just knew that Dad's knife he pulled out always caught my eye, and I always thought it was a really awesome knife. And so I guess that's got a lot to do with why I am such a huge copper lock fan now. I've mentioned this in videos before, but the very first knife that I bought, let me see if I can find it, it's right here. The very first knife that I bought when I started collecting was this one right here. And I remember seeing this, and I remember thinking, hey, that's a knife like Dad used to carry. And I got this one on eBay for a ridiculous deal, and it I guess it left me kind of jaded about knife prices, because I think I got this copper lock for like 30 bucks. And I guess in my mind I thought, man, you can get these case knives pretty cheap on eBay. And then when I went back to find another one, I was like, oh man, what happened to $30 copper locks? They don't really exist. But this one here was used. It's got some scratches on the blade, like I've never even tried to worry about polishing them off. It's got scratches. The blade is not centered worth a flip, but this is still a ridiculously good looking knife. And this was the first one that I bought. I didn't decide to start collecting and buy this. I sort of bought this and started talking to guys about knives on Instagram and stuff, and that's when it turned into an obsession. But this is the knife that kind of started it all. So anyway, coming back around, I commissioned Kent to make a pancake sheath like this, and I had him do it in, I've got it already boxed up, or I'd be showing it to you, but I had him do it in a natural leather. I got our last name stamped into it like this, and like I said, I'm giving him a dark red bone. It's almost like a dark chestnut, but it's dark red bone. And so I had the stitching done in dark red, and let me tell y'all, it is a sick looking setup. I went ahead and put the knife in there so that by the time I give it to him at Christmas, it's already going to kind of be, you know, formed to it. I'm so excited to give him that. But Kent sent me this one too, and I don't know what to even say. You know, me and Kent, we have a pretty good relationship, and when I got the box and opened it up and there were 2 sheaths in there, I was like, dang, Kent, what's this extra? And he was like, oh, I just want to send you an extra one. So cannot thank Kent Smith enough. I mean, Kent Smith single-handedly scratches the itch sometimes when it comes to leather or pocket knives. You know, we're always trading, but he is just one of a kind. Absolutely one of a kind. His stuff is phenomenal. I have never had anything of his even have a stitch to come loose. It's really good stuff. So this has kind of become my go-to for anything over 4 inches. I'm going to put it in one of these. Obviously, these 2 are holding single-bladed copper locks. If I had a single-bladed trapper, that would work as well. Something like this would probably work for a tribal lock, which I don't have any of those anymore. But then this one here, like I said, it's bigger. It's got a bigger opening, and it will take a trapper, or what I like to put in it a lot of times is a 75. And it wears so nice on your hip. You don't even know it's there, but when you need it, it's there. So let me show y'all something here. I know this is just a ramble, and if I start a idea or a topic and I don't ever come back to it, I'm sorry. But all I ever want to do with this video was just to sit here and ramble about some stuff. But while I've got this out and handy, I made a short, or I might not have ever taken it to YouTube. I might have only put it on Instagram. Hang on, guys. Had to move my leg. I was starting to get a cramp. I didn't want to kick the tripod. I might have only made a Instagram reel out of this, but I did this trick one time to a mini trapper. It was a Frost mini trapper that I ended up giving to J.O. And J.O. Ventures Outdoors. I'm going to shout him out too. Y'all go check him out. J.O. Ventures, not Adventures, but J.O. Ventures Outdoors. He's got an awesome channel and a really awesome dude. And he's another leather worker, and I will show y'all some of his stuff in a minute. But I did this to a knife, and then I wound up giving it to him. But there is a way, and I'm not going to tell y'all that I recommend it, and I'm not going to tell y'all it's the correct way, because it's not. The process of putting a half stop on a knife is very, very simple. Basically, instead of leaving the very tang of the knife round, all you need to do is square it off. And that way, when the knife comes into this halfway position, the back spring catches the flat spot on the back of the blade the same way it does the bottom and the top when it's closed or open. So what I have done to a few knives is I have carefully, and I mean carefully, let me show y'all this action right here. Check that out. And I even got it to where the back spring is flush in the half stop, which is kind of something that, you know, it takes a little bit of, you got to be looking at what you're doing. You can't just go crazy and then say, oh, let me close up and see where it's at. You kind of got to work with it a little bit, put it in half stop, check your back spring, go back, grind a little more. But I was able to get this pretty darn flush, even in the half stop position. But what I did here is I used a air powered Dremel, because they're thinner. They're like no bigger around than a Sharpie almost. But I had a cutoff wheel, and I held this thing in my hand, and I used that cutoff wheel, and I'm gonna try to get it where you can see it. I very so gently go in there and start grinding that round cam. They call it a cam tang when it's not a half stop. But I started very easily, gently grinding down the cam and flattening it out, and then I do this side. Now, the tricky part is that cutoff wheel, that abrasive disc, it will break down and you will lose your kind of your sharp corner. And then so what happens sometimes is when you're grinding, the tang of your blade almost becomes like a little U shape. And that will sometimes interfere with how it interacts and how it, what's the word I'm using? It will interfere with how it mates up, I guess, to the back spring. So you kind of almost have to go in here at a little bit of an angle, this way and this way, this way and this way, without, you don't want to get carried away and wipe out all of your liner. If you wipe out all of that brass liner, you can sometimes wind up with some blade play. And I know that for some people, blade play is the devil. Now, it doesn't necessarily bother me if a knife has a little blade play, but I hate for a knife to have a lot. Now this one here, it's solid. It really is. I wouldn't lie to you. This one here is solid. Both blades remain solid. No blade play whatsoever. I'll show you the spade blade. Now I've actually thought about, because I've already tinkered with this one, and this is that same $25 trapper that a bunch of us bought. I found this seller on eBay selling these brand new carbon steel trappers on eBay for $25 a piece, and I knew they had more than one, because you know you can look and see, and it said, you know, 5 available, 7 or 8 available, whatever the case was. And I bought one of these things, and I turned around and I shared that link with everybody I could think of, and a bunch of you guys bought these. I know Big J got one. I think he wound up giving it away in a live giveaway, but he got one. My friend Joey Hunt got one. I'm not sure who all, but a bunch of guys got these things. And so this is an inexpensive knife, and I was okay with going ahead and trying to do a little modification to it. So that's the reason I went ahead and started with this one rather than, you know, something like this. I'd hate to fool around and mess up a knife like this, but when you have something inexpensive, it's like, well, if I wreck it, it might not be the end of the world. So I went ahead and did this one, and it actually worked out pretty good. I'll show you the spade blade action. It jumps right into the half stop. It may not be quite as perfectly on a 90-degree angle as the clip point, but it's close enough. And like I said, once again, I was able to keep that back spring flush in the half stop. You know, sometimes when you put a knife in the half stop, the spring is still proud, and that's because the cam didn't get ground down quite enough. But this one here, now look, the back spring on the spade blade is not as strong as the clip point. It's been that way ever since I acquired this knife. It's just not as strong. You can tell when you open it, it snaps there, but it doesn't snap hard, and it's weak. This one here is much better. Pops in, and you can hear the difference. Now, so what I thought about doing with this knife is actually doing a spade blade delete. And I've watched some videos, and I thought about trying to take this thing apart, remove the spade blade, and then put the cover back on and finish the pins off flush. And I want to try my hand at creating a single blade trapper out of this knife. Now, I'm not telling y'all that's what the next video is going to be about, because I may get to a point to where I'm like, I'm not going to fool with that right now, but it might be something to look forward in the future. All right, so let's see, what can we talk about next? Let's talk about oiling knives a little bit. This is something I've kind of had on my mind for a long time, and I thought I might do a whole little video. I thought about doing a whole little video, maybe even doing a little demonstration with a piece of paper and some pepper or something like that. But when I first started in machine shop school, you know, we all had our micrometers and our calipers and all of our precision measuring tools and all that. And one thing that you want to do when you have nice tools like that is keep them lubricated, right? Well, this wise old machinist that was teaching school down there, he told us, he said, now listen, he said, y'all don't be pouring oil all over your micrometers and all of your tools, because oil attracts dirt. If you've ever been up under a car doing an oil change, and if that car had any kind of an oil leak, you're going to notice that wherever that oil residue is, it's going to be covered in dirt and all kinds of grime, because it acts as something to hold and the dirt to adhere to. So clean pivots are better than oily pivots. Now, with that being said, these carbon steel knives, they require some oil. If you use a knife like this every single day, you can almost get by without having to oil it, because before it can rust too bad, you're going to have it out wiping it with your shirt, all the kind of stuff you do. But I have seen it more times than not. I use a carbon blade. This one's a CV, but they're carbon steel, and maybe I use this thing, and then I put it down and I say, okay, I'm gonna start carrying this 75 for a while. This one here is also carbon. And then I carry this 75 for a while, and then I come back and I pick up this whiskey bone trapper, and I open her up, and the blade's all rough, and it's like, oh man, this thing looks like garbage, and it's just rusted from one end to the other. Or maybe you got a big old thumbprint, and you can literally see the rust in the thumbprint. So it's imperative that you keep a thin film of oil on a carbon steel blade, especially if you're storing it, just to keep it from rusting. However, and I know that when you get a new knife, it may be a little gummy, and it's probably going to help to put a little oil in there and work that pivot and do all that stuff, and it's fine. And it may be needed, but I'm going to tell you something. I don't care if you're using a slip or not, and I brought this one out because this is a piece of work from Mrs. Sarah, Big J's wife, SD Leather Works, and she does phenomenal work as well. Every one of these leather workers, they do great work. This sheath here was pretty much made for this knife. It is wet formed to a 75, and the stitching and everything matches the bone. This is a chestnut bone, 75 Stockman. But not to get too far off the subject, another CV blade knife here, and this one's got some patina. You can see a little bit. Artificial lighting never shows off patina like natural lighting does, but this one here has peeled some apples and done some steaks and stuff like that. So you have to keep a knife like this oiled. You wouldn't want to get wet down in the pivot. That's going to cause all kinds of trouble. So when you oil a knife like this, and I've got this needle point oil, applicator, you can really get down in there and put a little drop of oil where you want it. I'm going to get off frame if I'm not careful. And this is fine, guys, especially if you're going to store this knife. You put your oil in there, you work this thing back and forth. Now, this knife notoriously does not have a super strong back spring on either side, and I kind of hate that about this particular knife. I mean, it's strong enough. It's strong enough, but it's not like as snappy as you'd like. But so you put a little oil in here, right? And let's say I put a little oil on the sheep's foot blade here too, so let me work this one a little bit. But let's just say I oil this thing real good. Let's say I put 2 or 3 drops on each pivot, and I put this thing in the sheath here, and I stick this in my pocket. 90% of the time, I'm gonna pull this thing out with all that oil in it, and I'm gonna go to open this clip point blade just to use this thing for whatever, and it's gonna go, and it's barely gonna wanna open, and you're gonna go, ugh, man, that was disgusting. And what's going on is, every little piece of sand, every little piece of dirt, tiny little powdery stuff in your pocket, and it might even have pocket lint stuck in it, it is stuck to that oil that you just put in that pivot. I know every one of y'all's experienced that. So I'm just here to say, I believe oil is better for storage. That way when you pull that thing out, it's not rusty and it's not gummy. You're gonna have a nice action, but I'm gonna tell you, you put too much oil in your pivots and stick that knife in your pocket, and halfway through the day, you're gonna pull that thing out and you're gonna be like, ugh, that was terrible. So that's my little spiel about oiling a knife. Now, this applicator right here is pretty handy. If y'all don't have these, I'm pretty sure you can still get on Amazon, and you go and you look up McMurtry's EDC oil. It's spelled like McMurtry. The guy that made these, some of y'all are going to recognize this name. There used to be a channel, and there used to be an Instagram page called The Clip Point. And a guy named Greg McMurtry pretty well ran the IG page, and he had some really cool stuff, moderns and traditionals. And then him and his brother-in-law, I think that's right, his brother-in-law, they had a pretty successful run on YouTube. But the brother-in-law got a job, and I don't know if he had to move away, but he got a different job, and he wasn't able to do the show with Greg. And then I think Greg might have taken a new job, and he wasn't able. So their whole thing kind of fizzled out. But he was actually producing, I want to say he had some kind of a gig with Amsoil, and he was producing this oil and putting it in these little needle point droppers, and you could buy this stuff, and it came packaged up just like something you'd buy off the Walmart shelf. Now, I'm going to say this, and if Greg ever sees this, or if anybody that knows Greg sees this, I don't mean this in a bad way, but that oil that he sells, it was some kind of red stuff, like it had a red color to it. And what I did, I actually won a giveaway from his channel. And part of his swag pack was one of these bottles of his EDC oil. And I was so stoked to have his EDC oil, and especially this little applicator. I whipped this stuff out, and I went to dropping it and putting it on all my pivots. And son, that stuff had such a strong smell that my wife came from the next room and she said, "What in the world do you have? It smells so bad." And I was like, "Yeah, it does kind of smell, doesn't it?" It had a funky smell, I'm gonna tell you right now. And I don't mean any disrespect to Greg, because he had him a product and he was doing a good thing. But what I wound up doing was I poured that red stuff in a different bottle. I didn't waste it, but I poured it in a different bottle and I carried it out to the shop. And I just put some regular old 3-in-1 oil in here. I don't know how y'all feel about 3-in-1 oil, but I've never had a problem with it. It's always done what I wanted it to do. So this little applicator is worth its weight in gold, but I did empty it out and put some regular 3-in-1 oil in here. Here's something y'all could be interested in. I modified this chestnut bone 75 a little bit, and y'all might be thinking like, oh my gosh, you modified a chestnut bone 75. What I did is I hand ground swedges on some of these blades. Well, I did all 3 of them. The spade blade got a little swedge. I sort of copied what maybe like a GEC knife would have, the way they do their swedges, mostly in front of the nail nick. I did the same thing here with the sheep's foot, and then on the back side, rather than stopping at the nail nick, because obviously it doesn't have one, I just kind of went all the way back with it and tapered it down. And this actually turned out pretty decent. Spade blade, same way. And then on the clip point blade here, I didn't want to go crazy, but I did kind of the same thing. If you can see right there, just in front of the nail nick, I did a little swedge. And then on the back side, you almost can't even tell because I didn't want to get carried away and ruin anything, but I tapered that one off as well. And it could have easily ruined this knife. You know, sometimes you do things and you're like, ooh, that worked out good. I'm glad I didn't wreck that. And then sometimes you do wreck it and you're going, oh my God, what was I thinking? But this worked out pretty good. These 2 knives here, y'all will not be able to appreciate this as much as I am handling them. I actually took sandpaper, some kind of fine grit sandpaper, and I smoothed this up to where you cannot feel a transition between liner, cover, and back spring. Like, it is as smooth. I mean to tell y'all, I rubbed and rubbed and rubbed and rubbed until my arm was gonna fall off. And then I polished it, and then I would go back and rub it again. And I did both these knives this way. I don't know if you'll be able to tell just by looking at the glare and the reflection, but I'm telling y'all, I slicked these back springs up. And then I took Mother's polish. That's my go-to polish. I've never owned case paste. I'd love to have a tube because obviously it's case branded, but I've never had a tube of case paste. But I love this Mother's mag and aluminum polish. And I went back after I was satisfied with the transitions. I went back and I polished this up, and that way the bone got slick again and the back springs are slick. And I did both of these the same way. And it really changes the feel of the knife. Those transitions are just buttery, absolutely buttery smooth. And so once again, that's just something that you can do. It takes a long time to get it that slick, but in the end, it's really worth it, you know. Like I said, I've got to a point with my collecting where I'm not really interested in just buying new stuff. I've just never been interested in, oh my God, Case released a new Sea Dragon or a new peanut butter and jelly. Like, I've never been the guy that chased the new release. I'd much rather find something from the mid-90s or the late 90s, early 2000s, and you get a quality piece to start with. And then if you can put a few touches on it, make it your own, it's just that much more fulfilling, in my opinion. So this is an absolute gem of a chestnut bone 75. I've got a couple of copper locks that are also in chestnut bone. The only thing I hate about the copper locks is they didn't do very many carbon steel copper locks back then. You could get a yellow one, and I really think that's all you could get. And those weren't even very popular, I don't think. But yeah, so I've got some chestnut bone, a couple of chestnut bone copper locks. They both have a stainless steel blade in them. But that's okay. So anyway, we'll talk about a few more things here. Here's one I probably never really dedicated a whole lot to on a video. I have shown this, but I've never really talked about it in depth. This is a 1976, I think if I count the dots right, 1976 old red bone copper head that I inherited from my father-in-law. My father-in-law didn't give me this knife before he passed away, and my mother-in-law didn't give it to me either. We just found this knife. I found this knife alongside a Bulldog brand that I don't have out here. A Bulldog brand Stag, kind of a trapper, like a serpentine trapper. I found these two knives alongside each other as we were cleaning up, you know, the property of the house, the contents of the house, which we still have the house. We've got a ways to go before we can take the next steps with it. We still have that property, my wife's parents' house, but this knife was in like a little jewelry box thing alongside that other one. And man, was I not, you don't want to say excited, because you were having to do a job that you wish you weren't having to do. You know, my wife lost both of her parents way too soon, but we were just going through things, and my wife said, "Hey Wes, here's you a couple of knives." And when I saw these, they instantly became a couple of my most prized possessions. I don't have many copperheads. I gave my grandpa one of my copperheads because I thought he would be able to get the blade out easier than on the little Stockman that he was carrying. And I don't think he carries that copperhead. I'll probably wind up back with it one day. I don't think he uses it. But this knife here that belonged to my father-in-law has clearly seen some use. All of that patina is my father-in-law's patina. I made it a point not to polish that off. I cleaned this knife up and I polished the handle just a little bit and the bolsters, but I left this patina. Every bit of that patina was on this knife when I found it. Miraculously, this knife was not rusted. It looked about like this when I got it. And when I say this thing, y'all, some of y'all have some copperheads like this. Michael Richter has a copperhead that is probably one of the best looking copperheads I've ever laid my eyes on. It's in way better shape than this one. It looks like it's never been used. Probably hadn't been used before he got it. And Aaron, again, with 865 knives, he has a banger of a copperhead, but this one here just means so much to me because of who it belonged to and the way I got it. And when I say this thing has snapped for days, like guys, I know you didn't really hear a loud snap, but this thing here would just about take your dang finger off if you had your finger in the way. That little pin blade, you hear that? That little pin blade is just something else. I mean, I've got this thing oiled because I don't want it to rust. That pin blade, man, it's a guillotine. But just watch that. I mean, they knew what they were doing back in the 70s. I guess after handling a few knives from the 70s, they have become really my favorite era. Like I said, I really like the 2000s and the 90s. Some of the knives from the 80s, they don't quite feel like this. They just don't. I don't know whether Case was going through some reworking or whatever, but knives from the 80s, and y'all may have a different experience because I've never handled too many knives from the 80s, but I really prefer the 70s and the early to late 90s is really been my jam on Case knives. Let me see if I've got, yeah, here it is. Here's another trade with Kent. I'll go ahead and pull these both out. This one's from like 75. I'd have to go back and look. I'm pretty sure it's 75 or 76. This one here's a 70. You can clearly see the 10 dots on this one. This is a 1970 red bone razor. This thing also has a nice half stop. The action on this knife is pretty nice. It's not nothing like this one. The back springs are not near as strong on the razor as they are this copperhead, but it still has a great action. And just look at this thing, man. Now look, I'm gonna burst y'all's bubble a little bit. These knives from the 70s are not perfect. You can find gaps, and some of this may have come from use. It may have opened up from being used all those years, But I'm not going to sit here and say that case knives from the 70s, from any era, are just absolutely perfect. But it's still built with some serious quality. When you hold this knife in your hand, you can feel the quality. Everything's pretty smooth. There's a little bit of a recess in that back spring. I'll use that Zippo as a backdrop. You can see a little bit of recess right there, and you can feel that. Look, it's not a big deal. It does not affect the function of this knife whatsoever. Obviously, you've got some carbon steel blades going on here. The pin blade here is got actually a better action than the bigger razor blade. But and that could be a little gritty, you know, because sometimes you just pull them out and they just got a little pocket lint in them. It's not a big deal. But I thought I'd show you this one while I had the copper head out, because these knives here are about, I've got a couple of knives from the 70s, but these here are pretty good representations of what you're getting from a knife from the 70s. Now looky here, blade centering. Some of y'all are losing y'all's minds over blade centering. This razor is pretty dang centered. My beloved copperhead is not. I'm kind of looking off to the side because my holder is right down the center of my screen, but you can see that pin blade is off to the side. And this one here is not touching, but it's riding closer to the edge of the liner too. But look guys, I know GEC puts a knife together and everyone would lose their minds if they got a GEC with an off-centered blade. But like, look, y'all need to really understand, it's hard to get a blade right down the center. There's a lot that can affect blade centering. If these two sides have a little bit of shift, then that pin has to go with it. And next thing you know, the blades are off center. And it doesn't take much of this to affect the blade down here. It doesn't take much at all. It's just, you just understand how a knife is made. And when I see guys like trying to bend blades and straighten them up, ooh, it kind of makes my skin crawl. I'm not saying that to upset anyone, but I would much rather deal with the blade even touching a liner than I would trying to bend it. Oh, it just seems risky to me. I don't want this video to go on forever. I don't even know. I can't tell how long it's going, because like I said, the way my camera's, my phone's being held, it's blocking my time. This is a JO slip. I told y'all I'd show y'all a JO slip. JO sent me this after I started YouTube. He sent me this just out of the goodness of his heart. It was basically like a welcome to YouTube gift. And I'm gonna tell y'all, JO, buddy, he can put together a nice slip. This is just about perfect as far as not being too stiff, not being too flimsy. This slip holds a trapper, or it holds a 75 perfectly. So what I've been doing with this slip, Kent Smith, once again, I'm gonna bring his name up. He gifted me this out of the blue one day. We had a trade, or maybe he was sending me one of these pancake sheaths. Gosh, we've done so much I don't even remember. I believe he sent me a pancake sheath, and that was the deal we had. He was going to send me a pancake sheath, and I was going to trade him out a knife. And when that pancake sheath arrived, this one of a kind, y'all seen this before, but I'm going to show it off again because I'm absolutely in love with it. This one of a kind, bare head, custom camel bone with a yellow dye. And check this out, it gets better, guys. Warncliffe, and wouldn't you know, it's got a CV Warncliffe blade in it. This came from one of those older yellow Delrin, and you know that because it says 3. All right, look, you got the focus. 31549. 3 is representative of yellow Delrin. I'll show you right here real quick. Here's obviously a factory yellow Delrin, and oh, pull the right blade out. There you've got the 3254. So 3 is yellow Delrin, and where it gets confusing with case, a black synthetic knife is not going to be a 3, I don't think. I could be wrong, but I know that some of the synthetics do not carry the 3. If it's a jig synthetic, it's going to be a 6, just like a bone. A lot of people don't understand that either. Not every knife, case knife, that starts with a 6 is a bone handle, because jigged synthetic also carries the 6. So I see a lot of people, or I hear a lot of people say, it's a 6 whatever, blah, 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 it's got the bone handles, it's got the 6. Not necessarily. I don't have a knife to show you right here in front of me, but I'm here to tell you, 6 does not necessarily mean bone. Not in every case. But yeah, one more quick look around this knife. Absolutely just, what a stunner. This thing, like I said, it's been rehandled in camel bone. It's got some thickness to it that you don't normally see. You'll never see another bare head copper lock, I promise you that, unless somebody else has made a custom one. And this thing, man, when I first got this, it stayed in this sheath and it never left my pocket. I was so stoked to have it, and I still am. I don't carry it every day like I used to, because I finally calmed down from my excitement and I said, hey, this needs to be like a church knife or something, because it's just too nice to carry to a dang machine shop every day. But let me tell you something, this one right here is one of my absolute most prized possessions. I'm gonna show y'all a few more things, because I got all this stuff out here. Speaking of prized possessions, let's look at some Stag. This is the, everybody calls it the popcorn Stag sow belly. This thing has changed hands a few times. I got this knife and I said it would never go anywhere, and I wound up trading Kent this sow belly for a Stag GEC Viper 47. And at the time, the Stag 47 was about my absolute holy grail. And when he had one and he agreed that he would trade me this sow belly for it, I let this sow belly go to Kent. Maybe Kent and Big J might have been the only 2 guys that would have ever had a chance at this. I'm just going to be honest with you, because I'm really, really close with those 2 fellas. This thing went to Kent, and I got that 47 Viper, and Kent is one of those kind of guys that he knows when you've got a knife that you're pretty fond of. That rascal, Kent, turned around and found another Stag. This is a Rancher series. You notice that the case is laser cut into the Stag. What's special about these Ranchers, let me find the blade. What's special about these Ranchers is their carbon steel, their CV. You won't find many Stag handled case knives with carbon steel blades outside of this Rancher line. So this is a carbon steel chrome vanadium Stag handled sow belly, and look, it's not just a Stag handled sow belly, it's a phenomenal Stag sow belly. I'm super pumped that I own this knife. So back to my story. We traded Stag knife for Stag knife. You know, he got this killer case piece and I got a GEC knife, which was undoubtedly worth more than this, but he wanted this knife as bad as I wanted that CV, or that 1095 Stag Viper. So we made this trade. That rascal fooled around and acquired another Stag Rancher sow belly, and his is killer too. You'll have to go look at his Instagram page to see it. But he acquired another Rancher sow belly and Stag, and he hit me up and said, hey, I know you were fond of that thing. Let's trade it back out. Trade me something else. You can have this Stag sow belly back. And I think I sent him, like, I may not be right, but I think I gave him like 2 buffalo horn knives and maybe something else. But I had a buffalo horn seahorse whittler and I had a buffalo horn trapper. Both of them were really nice. And I want to say maybe I threw something else in because you have to fatten up the pot to get a knife like this back. But we made that trade, and out of the kindness of his heart, he gave me this. He gave me the opportunity to own this knife again. And I'm here to tell you, it left me once, and well, I'm sorry to pause. My mind's working. He wound up getting his Viper back. Oh no, he got the Viper back for a set of other copper locks. That's right. So I'm sorry, I digress. But I did trade him, I think, a couple of buffalo horn pieces for this knife back and maybe something else. And I don't own a buffalo horn knife now. And I wish I did, because if y'all have handled a buffalo horn knife, especially like a big trapper, man, they're nice. I won't go as far as to say they're as unique as a Stag knife, because they do take those buffalo horn knives and polish them down, and then they jig them. So they're a natural material like bone, but they have been jigged, so that you don't always get to see like the different colors that can come up in those those horn knives. But the one I had, it did have some like brown and stuff in it on one end. So it was really unique. If y'all ever get a chance to hit up a buffalo horn knife, get yourselves one. They're pretty cool. So, like I said, obviously very grateful to Kent. He gave me the opportunity to own that knife back. Here's another one that me and Kent worked out a sweet deal for. I traded Kent I don't remember what, but I wound up with my very first Stag copper lock with Kent. And what it was a nice Stag copper lock that somebody had used. You could tell it had some pocket wear because the little grooves and the ridges on the Stag were worn down pretty good. And you could just tell somebody had really used it. And I made that trade with him, and then I got on like the copper lock kick like really hard. Like right now I own 30 of these full-size copper locks. Well, Kent wound up with this one here, which is in 100 times better condition than the one I had. And he hit me up one day and he was like, hey, trade me this one here for that one that you've got. He said, I want one to carry. He said, I can't bring myself to carry this one. It's in such great condition. He said, but I don't mind carrying that other one. He said, you need this nice one in your copper lock collection. And I was like, brother, what are you even talking about? I said, there's no way you're going to trade me this mint 97 Stag copper lock that's in mint condition for that one that looks like somebody's been carrying it for 30 years. And he said, yes, absolutely, I want to trade you. He said, you take this nice one for your collection. I'll take that other one. He said, I like that other one. I said, well, brother, I'd be a fool to turn that deal down. So we swapped them. And I don't even know if I kicked in anything as boot. I might have threw a little trapper or something in there with it but I might not have. I'm not going to say I did. I could be wrong, but I know we traded the Stag knife for the Stag knife, and he insisted that I get this one here for my copper lock collection, and this thing's epic. Like, it's killer. Like, I owe everything to Kent for this one here. It's just an awesome, awesome piece. Here's another one y'all might be interested in. I'm not going to show them all because I need to shorten this video up, but this is a medium Congress. Medium Congress knives are really cool. They're like whittlers, I guess, because they have coping blades and little pin blades and stuff. But this thing has half stops, as you can see. This thing is put together extremely well. Like, you can't find a gap. Even with 4 blades right here, you won't see a gap. It's put together so well. Now it looks like a jumbled up mess right here with the 4 blades, and they are in fact canted. I take that back. They are not canted. You can look at them. They actually all are straight. But got some fat Stag here. Just a really nice piece. The Stag looks great. This is one of my more expensive knives. I found a really sweet honey hole of case knives at an antique store that's about 45 minutes, almost an hour away. But I'm gonna tell you, when I have a little money in my pocket and I want to go buy a nice knife, that's the place I go to. I actually bought both of these knives from that same fella. He always has a nice couple of Stag knives, and these here were no exception. You'll notice both of these have that shield that's kind of like from the 80s or whatever, that Case XX. That's my absolute favorite shield. A lot of my copper locks have that. Well, copper locks didn't come out till the late 90s, so I guess these were shields from maybe the 90s and early 2000s. So I shouldn't have said a 80s shield. That's more of a 90s thing, I suppose. All right, guys. I was actually going to sit here and use my mineral oil and my little toothbrush, and I was going to rub some of these knives. This is kind of the little routine that I have. Anytime I polish a knife, there's always a little bit of residue left in the jigging, and you can't always get that out. And the more dry it gets, the more it shows up. This is my shotgun shell. This color and jigging pattern is called, gosh, they get so, you know, they all run together. I want to say this is called Autumn Harvest, I believe. You have your Harvest Orange, which is, this is Harvest Orange. I want to say this is called Autumn Harvest, but anyway, I like to take a toothbrush with a little bit of mineral oil, and I just give these things a little bath. This is not going, I'm not trying to get this in the pivot, I'm just getting this on the bone. And I really like to do this with my Stag knives, because if y'all notice, sometimes you get on eBay and you find a vintage Stag knife, and you get to looking towards each end and you can see all those little cracks and striations, and that thing never got any oil, it never got any hydration. So you can take mineral oil. I'm not going to do it on my Stag knives because I did it the other day, and you don't want to just soak them down. When you soak a knife down, a bone knife or a Stag knife, when you soak one down, you can oversaturate it to the point that you'll start to get some discoloration. Matter of fact, my Holy Grail copper lock, you see that dark spot? It already had that dark spot when I first got it. It's just where some oil has gotten in there and the Stag has absorbed it. I'm okay with it. That knife is never going to crack and do all of that stuff, but it does have that dark spot where that oil, you can get this, if you put some WD-40 or some 3-in-1 oil on here, it's either going to absorb it or it's not. It's just kind of a risky run, but I'm going to keep my Stag hydrated no matter what, because I just feel like that's the best way to keep it. And I do my bone knives the same way. So this is a really cool piece right here. This is a fairly rare knife. Y'all know I'm big into shotguns, so anything with a shotgun shell shield is going to catch my eye. And I had several of these. I wound up trading a lot of them away on my copper lock quest. I had several of these. I had the Rust Lock. I had the Folding Hunter. Anyway, they make others. They make a sow belly. They make a muskrat. I've seen a lot of different ones, but this was a gift from my mother-in-law, so it obviously never got traded. This will be in the collection forever. This knife has dead perfect blade centering, and it has a really strong back spring. Really love this one. Guys, I just got the nod from my wife from the other room that everyone's ready to go to bed, and I don't know how long I've rambled. I hope y'all enjoyed this. I know I said in another video that I was gonna start doing more gun stuff and kind of get away from these dedicated knife videos, but you know, we love knives and we like talking about knives and leather. And so I really just wanted to sit down here and shoot a little ramble video with y'all and just talk about some stuff. And so I hope y'all enjoyed this. It's been a while since we started, and I hope I've shouted some guys out and gave some guys some appreciation for some things here. I will say this before I get off of here. I'm not going to be able to tag everybody in this post in the description because my phone has this weird glitch where once I start tagging folks in the description, every single time it locks everything up. It locks everything up and I have to back up and start over. So if I don't get to tag, I'll try, but if I don't get to tag everybody's name, I do apologize. But I hope that I have mentioned everyone's name in this video. I know I forgot to mention Georgia Adventure when I pulled this copperhead out. This is a Georgia Adventure EDC Leatherworks slip. Right there's his stamp. You won't be able to read it, but that's his maker's mark. So I think this was the only leather guy besides maybe Richter. I don't think I ever pulled a Richter slip out. I know I talked about him. This here's a Richter slip, and this here is a Richter slip. This one's really cool. It's that 6-gun holster looking slip. So I will shout out Richter. And like I said, Georgia Adventure right here. This one was an SD Leatherworks, and so was this. This one here, she custom made for me. It's got my initials. It's kind of my nickname and my initials, the way that works out. So those are my leather makers. I know I talked about Kent Smith to death. I mentioned Big J. Aaron, I talked about Aaron. Travis, we did the sticker swap. I want to shout out my boy RH Blade and Shade. I also want to shout out Kark's Knives. I've been talking to both of those guys. They're cool dudes. So yeah, those are the guys that I like to talk to. And so I'm gonna get off of here. I know I've been on here probably for an hour now, just rambling and talking about stuff. So like I said, I hope y'all enjoyed this. I hope y'all enjoyed this style of video, and I'll catch y'all next month.